الحمد لله استهل بالحمد خير ما نزل إليك خمسا تبدأ.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Today we discuss the 9th juz of the Quran, which comprises of a major part of Surah Al-A'raf and then Surah Al-Anfal. The last juz we discussed Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaking about various Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam who had been sent by Allah to their communities, their people. Disbelief and arrogance took hold of them and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala destroyed them. At the end of the 8th juz, Allah Ta'ala spoke about Sayyidina Shu'aib alayhi salam going to the people of Madian. Now, when Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about these Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam and their people, in between an ayah that is very striking, وَلَوْ أَنَّ أَهْلَ الْقُرَىٰ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. If only the people of these villages to whom Allah Ta'ala had sent Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam, and generally people in general, amanu, they had brought iman, wattaqaw, and they feared Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Two qualities had they brought, lafatahna alayhim barakatim minas sama'i wal ard. Allah Ta'ala says, we would have opened upon them, unveiled upon them barakat, many different types of blessings from the skies and the earth. وَلَكِنْ كَذَّبُوا. However, they denied Allah Ta'ala. فَأَخَذْنَاهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. So we took them to task because of their doings. In this Surah Al-A'raf, Allah Ta'ala speaks about Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wassalam that was sent to Fir'aun, and of course the one mission of Musa alayhi salatu wassalam was to invite Fir'aun, and the other was that emancipate the Bani Israel from the clutches and the slavery of Fir'aun and take them back to Al-Quds, take them back to Mulk Sham, that is ancient Syria. However, in between, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about the various events that had taken place. Musa alayhi salatu wassalam's competition with the Sahirin and the sorcerers. Here, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about the different kinds of difficulties, tests, calamities Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had put Fir'aun and his people through, yet they did not believe in Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, as the first sign, Allah Ta'ala sent upon them tufan. Allah Ta'ala sent a flood, due to which their farms and crops were destroyed. When this would happen, and they would see that there is no way, despite the fact that Fir'aun claimed divinity, there was no way he himself or his people could come out of it, then they would solemnly pledge to Musa alayhi salam, we will bring iman. Thereafter, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent locusts in swarms. They even ate up the leaves of the trees. They became infested with so many ticks that it made all sorts of their grains unworthy of use. Then also, they would come to Musa alayhi salam, confess, solemnly pledge, we will bring iman. They would not do so thereafter when Allah Ta'ala had lifted it up. Allah Ta'ala sent frogs as a form of punishment. There was such an abundance of these frogs that if someone opened his mouth to talk that was from the Coptics, from the people of Fir'aun, a frog would leap towards his mouth. In other words, it controlled their every movement. Thereafter, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala sent down upon them the punishment of blood, and the water of their rivers, streams and wells all change into blood. Now again, they would solemnly pledge to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam that if only you would pray to Allah, then we will accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we will bring Iman. But they did not bring Iman. Thereafter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the Bani Israel, the people of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, and the evil ways in which they was disobey Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala speaks about the people وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَاضِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ, the people that were living at the shores or the coastal region. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had made a Sabbath, the Saturday, a day of observance, a day of prayer in which they were not permitted to carry out any form of livelihood, any form of earning, like how in our Sharia, the command of Jumu'ah, and Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala says, وَذَرُوا الْبَيْعِ, but for them it was the entire Sabbath, the entire Saturday. They created their plans and they put out their nets before the Sabbath would set in, and then they will collect their nets from the water because they were coastal people and they lived on fishing and the income was derived from it. So when the Sabbath would come to an end, they would collect their nets, and in this way they found a loophole in the law of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Ultimately, they wanted to disobey Allah, and hence Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala had destroyed them by Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala making them apes and khinzir. And in that way, Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala speaks about the people of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam, the Bani Israel. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this surah Al-A'raf, ayah number 172, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the pledge of alastu bi rabbikum, that a point in time when there was only arwah, there was only the souls. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala asked each and every soul, alastu bi rabbikum, am I not your Rabb? And the response was, Bala. Why not, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala? You are our Rabb. Amongst the ayats towards the end of Surah Al-Araf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the people that have taqwa. The month of Ramadan is a month لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that you may gain taqwa. So Allah Ta'ala says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. Those who have taqwa, when they are afflicted by the influence of shaitan, tadhakkaru, they take heed, they remember. They possibly will forget, but they will remember, and then suddenly they become very observant of the commandments of Allah and their hearts open towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. With regards to this, some of the commentators have narrated a very interesting incident in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu's khilafat, there was a young boy that would always accompany Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, and he would be in the masjid for most of his time. One evening when he had left the masjid at night rather, a woman that was promiscuous, indecent, immodest, invited him, and momentarily he got carried away and he accepted her invitation. When he had gone into her house, something had come to him, and what was it that had come to him was something, a message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what was that message of Allah? إِنَّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا إِذَا مَسَّهُمْ طَائِفٌ مِّنَ الشَّيْطَانِ تَذَكَّرُوا فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْصِرُونَ. This ayah became an echo in his mind and in his ears and everything else, and then he collapsed. The woman left him outside the home, and eventually this person had passed on. Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, when he comes to know, Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu goes to his qabr after the person was buried, And Sayyidina Umar, he says, recites the ayat of the Quran addressing the inmate, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. For that person who feared the standing in front of his Rabb, for him is two Jannah. People that were around Sayyidina Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu witnessed that from within the qabr they heard the voice come, O Amirul Mu'mineen, you but recite the verse. I am experiencing this. So we can always make tawbah to Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala, make amends and continue our life. The next surah, Surah Al-Anfal, Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala begins the surah in a way that the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum were concerned in the battle of Badr with regards to the spoils of war, what will happen. So Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala speaks about it here and then in the beginning of the 10th juz. However, an important ayah that is quite striking here is Allah Ta'ala describes the believers, innamal mu'minun, certainly those who have brought iman, those who have perfect iman, the believers, alladhina idha dhukira Allah wajilat qulubuhum, that when they are reminded of Allah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's name is mentioned, they have the awe of Allah and their hearts become fearful of Allah. Secondly, وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُ, and when the verses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are recited upon them, it increases the quality of their iman. The third, وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, they have tawakkul and they place their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, those who establish salah and they spend from that which they have been sustained with. أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ حَقًّا, they are the real and true believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thereafter, Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala speaks about some of the events of the battle of Badr. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all the ability to recite the Quran, to have love for this Quran, to fulfill the haqq of the Quran, and to spread the message of the Quran. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyil kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
بالحمد حين تقرأ بالحمد حين تقرأ